Hey, welcome to the second episode of Partners in Progress. I'm Joe. This is Liz. We're a married couple and we're both entrepreneurs. I hope you guys had a great 4th of July. I know we did. We kind of went all over the place, but it was a good 4th of July. So
There's a lot of fun.
um, this week we're going to be talking about growth and standards. And I think standards are basically, I like to think of it as like the map for our identity, because a lot of times we think we know what we're supposed to be living by, and I don't mean standards by like, I don't mean moral standards at this point. I mean, I believe that there are ultimate, objective moral standards. I'm talking about, the standards that we each hold ourselves to, and that's going to be different for everyone. I mean, we're married and we have different standards. And again, that doesn't mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Everyone's just got different standards. We've got different things that we hold ourselves to,
hmm
And like I said, I like to think of the standards as kind of the map of our identity, because what happens is no matter where you are in life, Tony Robbins says that you don't always get your goals, but you always get your standards. So you're always going to live, you're always going to have that standard. You're always going to have that set of, rules, I guess, that you live by. And sometimes that can change with people. Sometimes we upgrade that. Um, sometimes we downgrade it. Unfortunately, hopefully, not most of us are doing that. But I just wanted to start with kind of a story that I had this week, because um, I personally believe that we should all be continuously raising our standards. And to me, that's really the only way that you can move forward. That's the only way that you can move up, I guess.
hmm
And I mean up in a figurative sense. I don't mean like better. I don't
Well,
mean
well, better than you were
better than me.
yesterday.
Exactly. I don't
Yeah,
mean better than anyone else. I'm not comparing myself to anyone else. I'm comparing to myself of, like I said, yesterday, you know,
the you of
a
yesterday.
week ago, month ago, a
Yeah.
year ago. I always want to become I always want to be getting better. Um, but this week, it was a funky week, with 4th of July, and our schedules were kind of weird. Um, and for some reason, the last couple of weeks, I just kind of got off my really rigid morning routine, and it just kind of, I felt weird. It felt kind of funky.
hmm
Um, but I didn't do what I should have done, and that's get myself back on that routine as quick as I possibly could. And so that kind of started to affect other things, because uh, and then it started to snowball, because and at first I didn't know what was happening. I just thought I was in a funk. I just thought I was feeling weird. Something was off. But then I was analyzing it this week, because that's what I do. I analyze myself.
I analyze you too.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. I guess we analyze each other more than we probably should, right?
Probably.
But I guess that's one of the cool things about what I get to do, is that I can use my own pain, I could use my own setbacks as ways to help people in the future. So I think that's one of the ways that one of the powerful things about being able to help other people is, when you go through something, start analyzing, like start figuring out what you're going through and how you got through it, and then you can use that to help other
Mm.
people. But anyway, I digress. I start analyzing myself, and I realized that I had started my it wasn't that my standard had started to slip, because that's what I kept, I was journaling, and for 3 days I was like, I don't know what's going on with my standard. Is my standard starting to slip? Have I lowered my standard? And then I finally realized, like, it finally just clicked, and I realized, no, my standard is still here, but I'm not living up to it.
hmm
And so my identity was basically kind of having like this.
Crisis.
this freak out. Yeah, almost like an identity crisis. And I think that's what happens. And I've seen this happen with so many people is that if you don't live up to the standards that you've set for yourself, then you start to have kind of that identity crisis because your identity has to live up to that. And it can be anything from, a minor irritation to a full on breakdown,
Yeah.
But if your identity is not meeting those standards, then there's gonna be a misalignment. It's not gonna You're not meeting the rules that you set for yourself. And again, I'm not saying, absolute moral standards. I mean my standards and your standards.
Like your daily standards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was just interesting. And when I realized that I was not, and it was just some tweaks. That's the crazy thing. But when we,
When it happens slowly too, it's like, so I'm gonna sleep in a little bit today, and then you keep
because the 4th of
going.
July and all that,
Well,
it's a holiday,
yeah.
right?
Or it's like, well, I was up late because I was working or
Right.
whatever. So it's like, oh, I can just sleep in until 5, and then next day, well, 5:30 is
Right.
okay. Then at some point you get to 7:30, and you're like, wait, what is happening?
Right. And of course, the thought of the cold plunge in the morning doesn't
Yeah,
really help.
I don't do
When I
that.
do it
No.
every morning. I try to do it every morning. I've been a lot more consistent. This was just one of my crazy weird off weeks.
Yeah.
But I get into that cold plunge every morning. That's 30, 36, 36
35
to 40
degrees.
degrees, and I'm in there for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's crazy because you feel like you're gonna freeze to death, but then when you get out and all that circulation starts rushing back, you feel like amazing. But yeah, you've
Yeah.
done it a few times.
I haven't done it in the morning, like after getting out of a nice warm bed and then going into the
But see,
cold plunge. No
that's
thanks.
when you get most of the benefits though, because it just like shocks you awake.
Yeah, I don't want terror in the morning.
Well, I think.
That's not my standard.
Well, see,
It's
yeah,
your standard.
it's a
It's not
different
mine.
standard for me. See, and one of the reasons I do that is, I mean, I want that shock. I want that lymphocyzing in the morning, but at the same time, for me, it is a matter of standards because to me, when I want to get to the point where when I say go, it's time to go. Like my brain is trained to where when I say go, that means go.
Hmm.
And it's crazy how hard it is to force yourself into that 35-degree water. Like
Yeah.
it takes some real willpower to get yourself in there and then to stay in there. So that's one of my standards. But I've been yakking about myself.
Hmm.
What do you've raised your standards, dozens of times in the last couple of years, especially with our health and with the way that we've we've changed kind of the way we think, not only about health, but about how we're getting through everything with our son going through cancer treatment and everything.
Hmm.
So do you want to talk a little bit about how? Well, just talk about tell me about the how that how you first started raise how you that kind of first started
I guess
changing, that standard started changing in your mind when it came to health.
I didn't really think of it as a standard change because
Right.
I didn't that wasn't in our vocabulary at the time. It was just a matter of life and death.
Right.
So, and if you think about it, your standard is a matter of your life and your death.
Right.
And so, if you're not growing, you're dying. And
That's
for
a
the first three
that's a
months,
standard. That's a constant on with everything in the world. Look at anything
yeah,
in the world, it's either growing or dying.
yeah. So, I mean, if you in that first 3 months after, or 2 months,
Mm,
I don't remember how long it was. It was at least 60 days after his diagnosis. It kind of felt like we were just going through the motions, not
yeah.
really
You mean like right
striving.
after?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just like every minute, like, sorry, my brain isn't working. uh, it was like we're just taking it 1 minute at a time. We weren't
Yeah.
looking to the future. The future was scary.
Yeah.
And so we didn't think about standards. We just thought we have to keep him alive right now.
Right.
So when he started getting better and we could actually like think clearly,
Right.
it's like we can't. This isn't sustainable. We can't just stay in this minute by minute life. And
Which
that's
is where
when,
your standards come in, because
yeah.
you were talking about this isn't sustainable,
Hmm.
meaning we can't continue going on in this way long term,
Right.
right?
It
So we
would
had
kill us.
right. So it wasn't a matter of willpower anymore. It was a matter of raising the standards.
Right. Which is
And like I
very.
said, maybe we didn't think of it that way at the time, but that's how our mind was
Well, we were thinking
processing it.
about quality of life
Right.
next, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Right.
so we have to go down this road. This is the journey that we're going to be on. But what kind of people are we going to be while we're on this journey?
Yeah.
So at that point, you have to either raise your standards or just keep tolerating the
Yeah.
I don't know, victim status,
Yeah.
if you will, because it's really easy to just like get caught up in that victimhood.
Yeah. I think that's a good word for it, though. Victimhood, but also you said tolerate.
Yeah.
I think we, we get we get what we tolerate, right? You know, not only do we get our standard, we get that's also that tolerance. We're whatever we tolerate, that's what you're gonna keep getting.
Exactly. So we couldn't tolerate it anymore. And so that's when I started doing the research on, and there's so much out there on curing cancer
Yeah.
and, thriving through treatment, which conventional medical treatment is, it has its place,
Yeah. Sure.
but so does mitigating the side effects.
Yeah.
So I had to raise my standard in that way because I had to think differently.
Well, that doesn't. Not like they're gonna take us off of YouTube for that. Everyone knows that chemo has side effects.
Oh, sorry, were you worried
No,
about that? I'm just,
I'm just saying.
I
It's
mean,
just
like I said, it has
yeah.
there's medical emergencies, and conventional medicine has its place.
Yeah.
And I had to change my outlook on the whole medical system because I didn't want to be in that world. That wasn't the world
Mm,
I wanted to be in, but God had a different plan.
right.
But I had to learn to work with that world, if you will.
Yeah.
I had to change my mindset a little bit, not tolerate everything from that world, the medical
Right.
world, but to work with it so it didn't harm Kaylin
Yeah.
worse than it, is capable of doing.
Right.
So I don't know if that's raising
Well, definitely.
standards
Yeah.
or.
Well, because you realize something. You realize that it was staying where we were at, staying on that, like you said, that tolerance or even the complacency, right? Because we were just, like you said, we were in survival mode.
We
But
weren't
who,
living, we just weren't dying,
right? But who
you know.
really lives? Who really thrives in survival mode? No one.
No one.
You can't survive. You can't thrive in
No.
survival mode. It just doesn't work that way.
It takes all of your energy.
And we have those. Obviously, everyone's gonna have those moments.
Yeah.
I hope nobody else has watching this is gonna have, you know, cancer moments. But it's unfortunate. It's getting more and more common.
I
But
think,
it's
yeah.
but we all are gonna have those moments in our life where we have to go into survival mode. But we can't. You
You
can't.
can't live
You
there.
can't live there.
Mm-mm.
But I think a lot of people do live there.
Yeah.
And that's where raising your standards and maintaining your standards comes in, because you got to be able to live to that new standard. And it's, I talk to my clients about this all the time versus, I talk to them about how there's two different types of power, basically two different types of effort to get to your goals, for instance. So you've got push power,
Hmm.
which is just willpower. That's sheer
Yeah,
willpower
like you getting
pushing.
into that cold plunge, you have to
Yeah,
just push yourself down and
exactly.
get it
Right.
get it done.
Sheer willpower to
Yeah.
force yourself toward your goals. So it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, so it's like getting into the cold plunge. It takes that sheer willpower to get it done. But eventually, what you want, and you have to have some of that, especially in the beginning of whatever you're going through, whether you're going through cancer, you're going trying to get your financial goals, you're trying to, lose weight or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you do have to have a certain amount of push power to begin with. You have to have that willpower in order to start the process. That's
Right.
that's kind of the push power is the catalyst. But eventually you keep that's not sustainable. No one has ever had an unlimited amount of willpower. Everyone will run out at some
Well, it
point.
becomes habit at some point, right? Is that what you're
Well,
going toward?
yeah, well, exactly, because what will happen is your past standard will start to erode your willpower. Okay, so
Right.
what you have to do is you have to upgrade your standard, and then your new standard, which is a number of things. Like I said, I like to think of it as your map for your identity. But there's different things that fit into your standard. One would be like your why, the reason that you're doing what you're doing. Another one would be like your compelling future, the thing that's that's really making you want to get through or push through. Um, but all that basically fits into your standard. And when you raise your standard, then it creates this mental, almost spiritual, heart level pull.
Hmm.
So instead of having to push constantly, now you're creating a pull.
Well,
And
because
now
you
you're starting
put
to pull yourself toward your goal. You're basically, that force is pulling you forward instead of you just having to push
well,
toward it.
also when you attach a why to that goal,
Right?
it'll definitely pull you toward it. Like with juicing, when we started juicing,
Yeah.
that was a chore. That was
Yeah,
like,
it
okay,
was.
this takes an hour of
Still
our
is.
day. Yeah, it still is. But it
But
took a lot of will.
we don't think about it as much of a chore anymore.
Right, that's what I was going to.
So I'm
Like
sorry.
when we first started,
Right.
like, okay, this is gonna take an hour.
Jump the
It's
gun.
messy. We got pulp everywhere,
Yeah.
and it took a lot of willpower to just like go and do it.
Right.
And then, but now it's like we get up in the morning and we juice, and that's just our life. That's
Because that's part of
yeah,
our standard.
right.
That's part of our standard
And our
now.
why is to be healthy.
Right.
So if you have a strong enough why,
Well,
it's
and to
not as
be
hard to get to raise your
yeah,
standard.
and to have a specific standard, a specific why as well, because
Hmm.
you could say, and I know you and I know what we're talking about here, but when a lot of people will say I need to get healthy, but
Right.
that's not specific
I guess
enough.
it's more stay healthy.
Or stay healthy,
But
whichever. But
in the beginning, it was to keep Kaylin
in
from
the beginning, it was yeah,
dying.
yeah. In the beginning, it was to start flushing toxins and to start
Yeah.
renewing his system and to get more energy in there, to get more um, the keratin and everything in there to start rebuilding his system.
Right.
And
He
so
had to
that's how it
rebuild
started.
all those cells.
Now we're doing all the juicing. We finally caught up, and
Well,
now we're
yes.
doing the juicing with him.
Mhm.
But we have a specific standard. Like we got to have this many vegetables per day. Um, and we're not going to get into all the nitty gritty on that because everyone's going to think that's boring as heck.
Yeah.
But if you're interested in it, reach out to us, when we will be happy to share that with you.
Sorry, I just meant it's a
But
standard that was hard to
yeah,
start, but you keep going. Like the cold plunge, that's a standard that's just hard to start every day. It's not something that's really that you can get really used to, and it just happens as something that's like
yeah.
it's
There's
harder.
two
That
things
one's
that,
one that you have to push every day.
uh, to a certain extent, but
Mhm.
I have gotten to the point, and like I said, the last 2 weeks were really funky. I'm getting back into a rhythm now, but there was a point that I have gotten to a point where um there it's very it still takes some willpower to get in there, you can get to the point where you want the feeling that you get afterwards
Right.
more than you're afraid of the feeling that you're going to get first.
So it's kind of like running. You get that high.
Exactly, because it's exactly the same
Mm-hmm.
type of thing. Because it's like, man, I'm gonna feel like I'm freezing to death in there. But when you get out and every just thing just feels numb, and then all of a sudden that circulation starts rushing back, and you feel like $1,000,000, and it's really intense.
Yeah.
And you've done it a few times, and it's really intense. And that feeling that you get, I want that feeling. Like
Yeah.
I don't want the initial feeling, but the I want the lymphocyzing feeling more.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And then the other thing is, like I said, you connect it to your identity because when I look at that, I try to. I look at the cold plunge and I think, instead of thinking, oh my God, this is
It's
going to
gonna suck.
suck,
Yeah.
I think, this is going to make me better. This is going to make me healthier. This is going to make it to where my hip doesn't hurt when I'm running today
Mm-hmm.
because it works. If I do the cold plunge, I don't hurt that day.
Right.
But if I don't do the cold plunge, I hurt. So,
You want to choose your hard.
yeah, exactly.
Choose your
And
pain.
so I'm trying to think of the outcome. I'm trying to think of, it's like I showed you the swish pattern. You're thinking about the problem, I guess the problem you have, or the identity that you have now, but you want to switch it. You want to switch it out for the empowering identity instead of being stuck in the this sucks. You want to think, this is how I'm going to get better because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I was gonna ask, like, when you're changing, when you're first changing your standards,
Yeah.
what's a good way to tackle that?
Like to
Like, if you're not really sure what your why is yet, or like, but you're just tired of, let's say, like with losing weight. Because I know there's a lot of people that just want to lose that last 20 pounds or whatever.
right.
And it's like, well, I know my why is I want to lose that weight, but it's not always strong enough to push you toward it.
Yeah.
So what's a good way to, I don't know, start raising your standards, but without going too high? Because if you try and raise your standards too high, it will just, you'll get deflated because you
Right.
can't meet that yet.
Yeah, so you gotta start small.
Mm-hmm.
So you big so and you're right, you have to connect it to a why. And obviously, if we're talking about like raising our standards for certain things, right? Because
Well,
everything's
at this point, I'm just mostly talking about the one thing, the losing weight, because that's really what
oh, okay.
started your whole journey. Was wasn't just losing the weight, but that was
Well, for me, it was, as far as health goes, I was just sick of not being able to chase the kids around the house without getting worn out. So
right.
for me, it started with performance. I started at almost about a year ago. I was like 265 pounds, and I lost like 90 pounds. But it was, in less than a year. But it wasn't because, for me, and it's different for everyone, but for me, it wasn't about wanting to lose the weight. It was about wanting to be able to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So,
so
but
how did I raise my
right, but
standards?
you started small.
Yeah, so that's basically. I guess I answered the question. That's
Mm-hmm.
how I started. To me, it was, I felt ashamed that I couldn't chase my 2-year-old around the house without getting winded.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this sucks. Like I feel like an old man, and I'm not an old man.
Right.
And so,
Not that there's anything wrong
so
with being
find.
an old
So I
man.
guess to answer the question is just find that something a little extra, because if you're gonna if your why is just, I want to lose this weight,
You're not gonna do
you're
it.
not gonna lose it. But if you say, I want to be able to run around with my kids, or I want to be able to fit into those jeans, sometimes that's enough.
Yeah.
Or if I want to be able to, um, I want to be able to feel, I want to feel healthier. I want to be able to go on a walk, or I want to be able to go on a run.
Well, and also when you're raising your standards, you can also use pain.
Sure. So you don't basically you're talking about like instead of
If you don't have a strong enough why,
yeah
you can also use pain. I was listening to Tony Robbins, and he was saying wear clothes that are too small for you, and don't
oh
go a size up
yeah
or two sizes up or however. Just wear them that are too small, and that'll be a reminder to you saying, "Hey, don't eat that."
and then it's not just emotional
You're
pain,
feeling
it's
it
physical pain.
exactly.
You're going through physical pain in order to push yourself. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Well, and you can use it physically, you could use it emotionally. You could really
Well,
notch it
yours
up.
was kind of emotional pain because
Mine was
you
definitely
you
emotional.
felt ashamed.
Yeah.
Feeling
But you
ashamed.
could take that to a whole new level. You could be like, if I don't lose this weight, then I'm gonna die at 60.
Yeah, but
You
I
could
mean,
take it
if you
to
think
that
about it
level if you
that
wanted.
way, I mean, you're only in your 30s, so it's 30 years from now. That's a long time, right?
True.
So you wouldn't that wouldn't be something immediate, but your pants being too tight for
Yeah.
you,
Or I can't keep up with my kids. Yeah, you're
yeah,
right. It needs to be
it's
something immediate.
immediate.
Yeah.
You're gonna want to change right now so that you don't have to feel that anymore.
So I guess that would, in a way, that would be, I guess in a way that would be a way that you could like chunk down on an emotional level. Because like when you think about reaching a goal, like most everyone you talk to, when you talk about goal planning, you want to think of a big goal that you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to go toward, that you're trying to reach, trying to achieve. But if it's like I want to be a billionaire, for example. Let's just say that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like let's say that's your goal. You want to be a billionaire. But if that's your only goal and you have no way to chunk that down, what are the chances you're ever actually going to get
Right,
there?
you
If
have
it's
to
just like
make
I
your
want to be a
first
billionaire, I want to get a
dollar.
billionaire, I want to be a billionaire, I want to be but yeah, it's like okay, I want to be a billionaire. That's my ultimate goal. I'm just using this as an example,
Sure.
so nobody get freaked out.
I was thinking Mount Everest.
Okay,
You
let's say
climb Mount
okay, let's
Everest.
say you want to climb Mount Everest. Okay, that's what I want to do. I want to climb Mount Everest, and that's all you ever think about. It's just that's the only one. Now that's your ultimate goal. But if you just say I'm gonna climb Mount Everest someday, that's what I'm gonna do, but you never take a step up to, you know,
Up a tiny mountain
up
like
a little, Mount Dora.
yeah.
That's right around from corner from where we live, which is not a mountain at all.
I was
For
gonna
those of
say
you who are not
what's
from
the
around
highest
here,
point in Florida again?
highest point in Florida is like 200 feet or something above sea level
I
or
don't
something. And
remember.
it's up by Georgia
Yeah.
or Alabama. I can't remember. But anyway, but you got to start, like you said, you got to chunk it down.
Right.
So I like what you're saying with that because you say, I want to climb Mount Everest, but first I'm going to climb a 200-foot mountain. And then after
Mm-hmm.
that, I'm going to climb a 300-foot. And then I'm going to climb a 500-foot. And then I'm going to climb a 1,000-foot mountain. And you work your way up and you work
Yeah.
your way up with, in those goals to the point where now you have the endurance. Now you have the tools. Now you have the knowledge and
Yeah.
the strength to actually be able to climb Mount Everest, right?
Sure.
And so you can, and they call that chunking down. So you're taking a big goal and you're taking it down to these little pieces, and these
To
are the
where it's
things I
actually
need to do to where
attainable.
these are all the pieces I need to do in order to actually make that goal, right? You can do
Sure.
that. You do that in business. You do that in health. You do that. But I guess I had never should have, but I guess I had never really thought of it on an emotional chunking level because you can think like, here's my ultimate goal, I don't want to die at 60. But that's not gonna
It's not gonna
but
do
that's
it.
not gonna make you do something now. But if you go, okay, I still don't want to die at 60. That's a pretty big
But
goal
you
of
don't
mine.
wanna
But I also want to be able to chase my 3-year-old around without getting winded.
mm-hmm.
So that's something that I can work on right now.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of chunk down the emotional goals as well. And then as you start to fulfill those goals, you can start
Building.
and raising your standard.
And
You
you have
start raising that
endurance
standard.
for your standard.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise,
I think that's what's
you're just gonna
hard.
lose. You're just gonna lose momentum.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna be able to. If you had never climbed before
Yeah.
and you decided, you know what, to the hell with it, I'm just gonna go climb Mount Everest.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Like you got to be able, or even something even simpler than climbing Mount Everest. You're like, I'm not a runner. I've never really run before. I'm gonna go run a marathon.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
You're
right.
gonna die.
Well, you're just not gonna make it.
Yeah.
There's no way you're gonna
And
be
then
able to make it.
you're gonna feel bad about yourself.
Right.
And then you're not gonna try again.
And you're gonna beat yourself up.
And it's like you have to take that first step. You have to go that first mile before you can run 26.
Right.
Or you're like, oh, I'm gonna lose 20 pounds in a week.
Right.
You know, you're setting yourself up to fail when you raise your standards too high.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And if I think I think if you're just setting your goals too far ahead and you're not, like I said, not chunking it down,
Mm-hmm.
because the standards are something that you need to be able to live by right now.
Right, but if
Yeah.
you change your standards or trying to change your standards, but say you've never worked out before in your life,
Right.
you're like, I'm gonna work out for an hour every day. That's too much.
Yeah.
That's You're trying to raise your standards too much. You might work out for an hour or for the first 3 days, and then you're gonna go, oh, that's too much.
Right.
I can't do that, and then you're gonna feel bad because you can't.
Because your identity isn't matching your standards.
Right. So you have to start your standards lower, and then you can raise them.
Yeah.
As you go, because your standard and your identity change every
Right.
day.
Yeah. One way or the other.
Right. In your identity in a way, because I mean,
Well,
there's many. We have
you're not
many
changing.
identities.
Well, and you're not changing who you are. You're upgrading.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like the term upgrading your identity. You're not changing who you are. You are who you are. And being you is really important to be.
Right.
Not Don't try and be someone else. Try and be the person that you were made to be. But at the same time, don't settle for something less. You can always be more.
So what's hard with that, especially with women,
Mm-hmm.
is how do I put this? Uh, we're told to love ourselves the way we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to love yourself the way you are, but also want to change.
Right.
I don't know if that's the same with men. It probably is. But it's like,
I think that's a human thing.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, society says just be happy with who you are.
Right.
And then it's like, well, okay, so how do you be happy with who you are, but also feel like you want to be better?
Yeah. And that goes full circle to what we are talking about at the beginning, is that one of our core needs is to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be able to upgrade our identity in order to grow. We have to.
I guess my question is, how do you,
Oh.
how can you be satisfied with where you are right now in this moment, but still want to be better than what you are right now?
How can you?
Yeah, like
gratitude.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
Gratitude. Look, the thing is, you don't want to live in the past,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not going to be fulfilling. You can't get stuck in the past. But be grateful for where you've come, for how far you've come. I think that's the key, because, and you made a good point, because you want to get better, but at the same time, if you're not constantly improving, how can you be happy? Right? Is that essentially what you're saying?
Essentially is, how can you be happy with where you're at today when you still want to be better than you are today? You know what I mean? Because you're not going to be better than you are right now, right in this moment, because this moment is present.
But you can, though.
You can be better in the same moment that we're in right now.
You can commit to be better in the next moment.
Right.
Yeah.
But in the moment you're in right now, different.
That's all we've got. Right. All we've got is right now.
So gratitude. So finding
what you're grateful for, finding all of the things that have brought you to this place, and being satisfied with where you are, but wanting more. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because the essence of I would say the essence of fulfillment and happiness is progress, is wanting to move forward. The people, one of the one of the most common things I hear with all my clients all the time, and I know you hear it a little bit from the people you help as well, is I feel stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
It's
Or I don't know what to
I
do,
don't know what to do.
right?
Yeah,
Which is the same thing as
and
feeling stuck.
being scared, which is the same as being stuck, because
Right.
it doesn't matter what your situation is or your journey is. When you feel like you are stuck, it's scary.
Right, because you're not growing.
Right.
And that's one of the most, I think that's one of the most terrifying things as a human in general is to feel stuck because we want to keep growing. We want to keep moving forward. We want to get to where we're more. And see, we live in a society right now where we think that we want more. We
Mm-hmm.
want more stuff. We
Right.
want more status. We want more money. We
Mm-hmm.
want more vacations. But really what it comes down to is we want to be more.
Yeah.
That's what's going to make us happy. Having more stuff and more vacations and more money and more, that's not going to make you happy. Who you become is who you is going to make you happy or make you sad, as Tony Robbins likes to say. um, but who you are is what matters.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's so terrifying to feel stuck, because if you're stuck, that means you're not moving forward.
Right.
And if you're not moving forward, you're sliding back. So that's the importance of keeping that, of raising that standard continuously. And it's continuous. And see,
Yeah.
that's one of the things I've talked to a few of my students about is like, well, okay, so let's say, because one of the things I recommend is the morning routine. And I don't go through, I don't tell everyone they need to have my morning routine. In fact, I don't think anyone should have exactly what I have. I think they should have what works for them in their own life. But I think it's very important, and it's been very important. It's been one of the biggest things, one of the biggest things in my life that's turned helped me turn a corner is, and it really just comes down to discipline.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of the things that I can control early in the day. I can get some momentum. I can have a win. And to me, that's really what it comes down to. But I've actually talked to people in some of my classes. They're like, okay, so let's say you do that. You do the whatever. You do the cold plunge. You do workout. You do all this stuff. What happens if you just can't maintain it? It's like, well, what do you mean? What happens if you can't maintain it? Well, like what happens if you just can't?
That's what I was saying.
And
When you
it's
go 3 days working out for an hour
yeah.
and then you can't maintain it because your body hasn't built up the endurance.
Well, that's see, but you start small.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to start crazy. My point. I'm not saying you have to start crazy. I guess
But
I
that's
didn't
what
make the
they're
point.
seeing is when
I
you're
didn't.
talking to them about your morning routine because you didn't start with a cold plunge.
No,
You
but
didn't.
what they were talking to, yeah, but what they were saying is how do I, how do I maintain it long term?
Right.
And the point is, yes, you start small. Start small. Start with something you can do. Just start with a couple of things,
Like
and
stacking the
then
deck.
like
That's what
stacking.
you did.
And then once you are good with that, you add a few more things, or one or two more
It's
things,
like
one more two more
working
things.
with a child.
But yeah, it's a learning process. But
Mm-hmm.
here's the point: you have to be okay with raising your standards. You have to be okay with not stopping.
Mm-hmm.
That's and I think that's one of the things that most of us initially struggle with, because when years ago when I first decided I was going to start working out, and that didn't stick, because I heard so many people say like, well, if you work out like crazy, if you have this crazy routine and then you stop, then you're going to gain all the weight back. And that scared me, because it was like, oh man, so I got to just keep maintaining this for the rest of my life, or I'm gonna gain all the weight back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, spoiler alert, I did gain it all back. But then the turning point for me when it was when I was like, well, that's okay. I can keep doing it forever.
Yeah, it's you have to decide
It's a decision.
whether like, do I want to gain the weight back or do I want to keep doing this?
Well, yeah, it's just and it's yeah, it's your standard.
Both of
Do you
them are
want to be
hard. Mhm.
maybe overweight, or do you want to have a great uh,
I
body
don't know.
full of energy? Which one do you want?
Yeah,
That's your standard. And there's your standard.
and that's
Which one
where
do you want?
yeah.
And what are you willing to do to maintain that standard?
Well, and that's changing your perspective on
Right.
it because it's like it's not, oh, I have to work out every day. It's I get to work out every day
Yeah.
to
And you're
stay
yeah,
energized.
and you're looking at your identity. This is what I want to be.
Hmm.
This it's not that I have to do this every morning. It's that and for me, I can truthfully say, I know it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn, but I can truthfully say that when I work out, it's for my future self
Hmm.
and for my future family. I truly believe that, and it was not like that at first. It
Yeah.
took me a long time to get there, but like I was telling you earlier, sometimes there's been times when I miss workouts. There's been days when I miss workouts, but I never miss the hard one. I alternate between really, really intense, high intensity work, you know, like core training, and I do that 3 times a week, and then I do some leg work, and then I do some running and stuff, alternately. But 3 times a week, I do that really, really hardcore, intense um, interval training, high intensity interval training, and I have never missed that one in a year. I've never missed it, not once. And I keep raising it, but that's a different story.
Because
But
you raise your standards
but right.
continually.
But my
Yeah.
point is the reason I have never missed that one, and I truly believe this, that the reason I've never missed that workout is because I know that will serve me moving forward. That creates the person that I want to be. It's not, oh man, oh, I got to do the really hard workout now. It's no, this has to happen
So then,
because this serves me.
so then I would say the way to change your standards or to raise your standards is to change your perspective.
Yeah, change your well, yeah, and to
Hmm.
connect it to your identity.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking that I have to do this, you have to yeah, change your perspective to this is bringing me. It's like my favorite question, right? Is this action bringing me further away or closer to the person that I want to become? That's really what it comes down to when it comes to that particular workout is this bringing me closer to or further away from the person I want to become?